Hello friends, and welcome to a new video and story. Numerous reports have surfaced about the disappearance of girls and women, aged between 25 and 50, who were later found dead. The number of victims has now reached 16, all women. Meanwhile, the Iranian police are powerless in solving the mystery of the serial killer, who has been targeting only air vendors in the city of Mashad, one of Iran's cities. A serial killer has spread fear among Iranians, known as the Spider, due to the way he attacks his victims, pouncing on them and strangling them until they take their last breath. Today's story is about Saeed Hanai. Saeed was born in Mashad, Iran, on April 16, 1962, to a middle-class family. He had 6 siblings, and his mother, who worked as a seamstress, raised him with the belief that he should not mingle with girls or even be near them. At the age of 16, he suffered from a severe nosebleed and later became ill for a long time. His mother took him to the doctor, who diagnosed him with periodic insanity and prescribed lithium tablets that he had to take regularly. As a young man, Saeed participated as an ambulance driver, transporting bodies from Iraq to Tehran during the Iran-Iraq War. When he returned to his city, he continued his old job as a construction worker. He got married and had 3 children. During that time, he began to get into frequent fights, became increasingly aggressive, and his psychological problems began to surface. He was admitted to a psychiatric hospital twice, each time staying only briefly before escaping. Although his hospital records indicated that he was antisocial and dangerous, the authorities ignored this, and he did not adhere to his prescribed treatment. One day, Saeed found his wife Fatima at home, panting and with scratches on her face. When he asked her what had happened, she explained that she had been in a taxi when the driver stared at her through the mirror for some time before stopping the car and making an inappropriate proposition, thinking she was a prostitute. When she refused, he tried to assault her, but she fought him off and threw him out of the car before running back home. Upon hearing the story, Saeed became enraged and took his wife to the taxi stand to seek revenge. However, they could not find the driver. Frustrated, they went to the police station to file a report, but his wife could not recall the driver's face well, and the police, overwhelmed by rampant crime, treated their complaint with indifference, further fueling Saeed's anger. We might think the matter ended there, but unfortunately, it did not. Saeed began to obsess over the incident, seeking a way to exact revenge. Initially, he thought of killing taxi drivers, but considering their numbers and physical strength, he realized it would be too risky. So he came up with another plan, targeting prostitutes, believing that if it weren't for their existence, the driver wouldn't have mistaken his wife for one, and she wouldn't have been assaulted in the first place. His first victim was a woman named Afsaneh Karimpur. Saeed picked her up from the street and took her to his home while his wife and children were away. After spending some time with her, as she was about to leave, something his wife had embroidered with porcelain flowers caught her eye. Seizing the moment, Saeed struck her from behind, causing her to fall face first to the ground. He then pressed his knee into her side and choked her with all his strength, turning her over and wrapping her scarf around her neck until she stopped breathing, her eyes bulging. He took the body to his backyard, placed it on the ground, and began digging, but during the process, he abandoned the idea of burying her in his garden. Instead, he wrapped her body in an old carpet, took it out of the city on his motorcycle, and disposed of it. From that day on, killing prostitutes he picked up from the streets of Mashad became Saeed Hanai's favorite pastime, alongside stealing whatever valuables they had. On August 10th, just 3 days later, another woman's body was found under tomato bushes near Bin Yarab in Mashad. Over time, the outskirts of Mashad became littered with the bodies of prostitutes. Saeed closely followed the media coverage of his crimes, particularly enjoying how some newspapers labeled him the Spider Killer. Some reports mentioned that some of these women had criminal records related to prostitution, which made the public less sympathetic and fed Saeed's ego, allowing him to cloak his heinous acts in a moralistic veneer. His audacity grew to the point where he would assist the police as a good Samaritan, helping them carry the bodies of the women he had coldly murdered, mocking them all the while. One day, after burying his 11th victim, he was walking through the streets of Mashad when it began to drizzle, the rain washing over his face. He felt the raindrops were a sign, blessing his actions and affirming his moral mission to cleanse the streets of prostitutes. This sense of validation led him to add 5 more victims after that day. One night, a woman named Mojgan was standing in Shahid Famida Square, waiting for a ride home. She was vigilant, looking not only at the street, but also at everyone passing by, having already heard local news about the killer preying on women at night. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a motorcycle, which stopped in front of her. She found herself facing a man in his late 30s. She tried to ignore him and looked away, but he spoke to her, asking, "Are you waiting for someone? It seems you don't have money. Am I right? I have a coupon for rice and oil at home that I don't use. What do you think about getting on the motorcycle and coming with me to get it?" Mozgun was in desperate need of money, but was afraid due to the news about the killer targeting women, so she refused. The motorcyclist rode away. At that moment, the park's guard, who had overheard their conversation, reassured her, saying, "I know him. He's a good person. He probably just wanted to give you the rice coupon." A few days later, while standing in the same spot, the motorcyclist returned and offered her the rice coupon again in exchange for coming with him to his house. Remembering the guard's words that he was trustworthy, she agreed and got on the motorcycle with him. As they approached his house, he asked her to cover her face with her headscarf to avoid gossip. She agreed. In the courtyard of his home, she was admiring a beautiful large mulberry tree when he suddenly grabbed her by the arm, dragged her inside, and took her upstairs to a room. He asked her to spread her headscarf on the floor and put all her clothes, bag, and belongings in it, so if someone came, she could quickly gather everything together. She complied, but suddenly, she felt the motorcyclist standing behind her, wrapping her scarf around her neck to strangle her. She quickly turned and hit him hard, causing him to fall to the ground in pain. She began screaming, which frightened him, and he opened the door to let her out. She grabbed her belongings and ran out of the house in terror, glancing back in fear until she reached home. Once home, she locked the door, barely able to believe she had just escaped death. However, she was too afraid to report the incident to the police, fearing punishment. The police were arresting many women who roamed the streets after midnight, and Mozgun was one of them. She was wandering the streets, drunk, when a police officer spotted and arrested her. At the station, she bitterly complained about how the police were targeting helpless women while leaving the real criminal free to kill them one by one. When an officer asked her what she meant, she recounted her experience at the motorcyclist's house. The police immediately took her in an attempt to identify the house, but she couldn't remember anything except the large mulberry tree standing in the criminal's front yard. They then took her back to the square, hoping she might recognize the guard she had spoken to that day, but he was nowhere to be found. However, by chance, they encountered a relative of the guard who regularly visited him during his shifts. The relative quickly recognized the descriptions Mozgun provided and identified the motorcyclist as Saeed Hanai. A large group of armed police officers went to Saeed's house and hid, waiting for him, thinking he was part of a criminal gang. However, they were shocked to discover that the culprit was just one man with an insatiable appetite for killing. The entire country soon learned of Saeed Hanai's identity, and journalists began glorifying him, casting him as a national hero who had taken on the task of cleaning the city of moral corruption. The police, in collusion with the media, kept a crucial part of the investigation hidden at the time that their savior had engaged in sexual intercourse with his victims before killing them and had stolen their jewelry and money, even giving some of it to his wife. The police made a promise to Saeed's family to keep that side of the story under wraps. His relatives even gathered blood money for the victims' families, selling Saeed's house to complete the payment, and influential figures intervened to appoint a skilled lawyer to defend him. In court, all the families of the victims agreed to settle, except for one family that refused to accept the money and relinquish their right to justice for their daughter, despite the disdainful looks they received from most people who supported the killer, seeing him as waging an unwavering war against immorality and vice. His 14-year-old son defended him in court, saying that his father was cleansing the republic of the corruptors of the earth, and many will take his place if he is killed. He claimed that 20 people had asked him to continue his father's work, but he told them, "Let's wait and see." At the end of the hearing, Hanai's wife told reporters, "Saeed always said that a woman who willingly goes to a man's house she doesn't know deserves nothing but death. Saeed didn't kill people. He fought corruption. One feels shame and disgrace for committing murder. But Saeed is not like that, and he didn't even know that what he was doing was illegal. I have never seen any bad behavior from him. Even now, I'm not afraid that he killed anyone. I am only thinking of his freedom." Saeed himself boasted in court, saying, "Everyone who met me knew that I was a religious person, and I never drank alcohol." Saeed Hanai declared, "I have killed 16 women since August 7th of last year. I have no regrets about my actions whatsoever. If I hadn't been caught, I planned to increase the number of murders to 150. I wanted to show everyone that prostitution and promiscuity have no happy ending. He said he felt proud because he had killed 16 cockroaches. He was always resolute and indifferent to the charges against him because he was confident that he would escape the noose. People encouraged him to feel that he was their savior. He was showered with love and cheers from his supporters. Amidst everything happening inside and outside the courtroom, the police, for reasons still unknown, suddenly turned against Saeed without warning. They announced that he had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital twice and was classified as a dangerous individual. They also released a forensic report stating that he had engaged in sexual activity with the victims shortly before killing them and had stolen their possessions. Initially, Saeed denied the charges against him, but over time he admitted to stealing their belongings after killing them. However, he insisted until the end that he did not commit any sexual acts. While awaiting execution, he still believed he would be saved, but he was executed and hanged on the morning of April 28, 2001 at the age of 40. The story of the serial killer Saeed Hanai has inspired many, leading to its adaptation into several films, including a documentary titled And Along Came a Spider, released in 2002. In 2020, a film titled Killer Spider was produced, followed by another film 2 years later about his life, Holy Spider, which was entered into the main competition section at the Cannes Film Festival that same year. And that was our story for today. See you in a new video, friends.